Twice a week, Van Lathan and Rachel Lindsay dissect the biggest topics in Black culture, politics, and sports on their show, Higher Learning. They discuss the most important and timely conversations while also frequently inviting guests on the podcast and occasionally debating each other. Check out Higher Learning on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Visible. Maybe you've already let your New Year's resolution slip. We all have, but you can still make a 2 year's resolution with Visible. Right now, you can get a one-line wireless plan from Visible for just $20 per month for 24 months. 24 months is basically 4 Bachelor seasons. That could be 4 engagements, 4 broken engagements. So many other couples we didn't see coming. It's really an eternity in Bachelor Nation. And that's unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon with no annual contracts. Switch now at Visible.com and use the code Visible24. Don't miss out. Offer ends January 31st. New members only. Promotional rate with service on the Visible plan. For additional terms and network management practices, see Visible.com. This episode is brought to you by eBay Authenticity Guarantee. eBay knows that when it comes to jewelry, authenticity is the real gem. When you see the blue check mark that says Authenticity Guarantee, it means your next piece will be carefully inspired by jewelry experts and will always be worth its weight in gold. Whether you're looking to make a statement or build the perfect everyday look, eBay is making sure you get the real deal. With eBay Authenticity Guarantee, you can trust that jaw-dropping piece will always arrive jaw-droppingly real. Ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms.
Wait, if she wanted to protect him, the only person she protected him from was herself. She spun herself a web, and the only thing she's getting out of is Croatia tomorrow in a middle seat to the Jersey Turnpike with some cheap wine.
I'm confused still, but I did speak my truth. It wasn't anything negative toward anybody here. I'm sorry that you all have to deal with this right now. This is just...
Smells like something you won't be smelling tomorrow. Sayonara, biatch.
Welcome to Bachelor Party. I'm Juliet Litman. Callie Curry is on vacation today, so I am delighted to introduce my Ringer colleague and our Bachelor recapper, Mr. Rodger Sherman. Rodger, welcome back. It's been a while. How are you?
Thanks for having me. This was a great episode.
It really was. It was like surprising. It was entertaining. It was dramatic. It literally had it all. I mean, I loved it. What was like your favorite part? We're obviously going to talk about all of it, but like what was like the most exhilarating moment for you?
I don't often get moved to actually laughing out loud when funny things happen on TV. Like normally I just quietly chuckle in my head. But when they brought in the Lady in Red guy to sing Lady in Red for Susie wearing the largest red dress in the history of mankind, I lost it. That was like, I could not believe that they got the Lady in Red guy, whose name I didn't know before this, to come sing Lady in Red.
I assume that was just like a random Austrian singing Lady in Red. Was that guy's song?
That is the Lady in Red guy.
My God.
He has a confusingly German name for someone who is not from Germany. His name is Chris de Burgh. He's from England/Ireland, not just a random Austrian guy. The song kind of sounds like it's being sung by a German guy, like the famous song. Like it has vaguely European accents going on in it, but I think he just sings weird.
Also, his birth name is Christopher John Davison, so he opted to have a Austrian sounding, German sounding stage name, which is like even more confusing for this. But
when he wrote the song in the 1980s, he said, "Someday I will be invited to Austria to be on The Bachelor." And
someday I'll be on The Bachelor and I'll need to have this name. Oh my God. I have to say, when I saw him come in, I was like, oh no, Clayton said there's one more surprise. It's going to be a private concert. And then when it turned out to be him, I was like, just him alone at the piano and them all. It's just the three of them plus whoever is doing production that we can't see in the room. I was just like, this is worst case scenario for the much hated private concert. I can't think of anything more awkward than that exact scenario. It's just so horrible.
Just two people and the Lady in Red guy singing the only song we know of his.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. We're going to come back to Susie. I think we have to start with the trajectory of Sarah because I was stunned. I did not see this Sarah arc coming at all. Rodger, were there any indications prior to this week that Sarah would have such an unceremonious departure?
No, honestly, and she'd been in like the sort of the season preview montages all along that made it kind of seem like she was going to go a long way. We had these little hints that she was going to make it at least to a very beautiful European country. And then she did.
Which she did. She made it to 2. I mean, Croatia and Vienna, pretty awesome. Good for her. Good for her.
The indicator for me was that this episode, like, so she was beefing with Mara, the Mara-Sarah beef. Very tough to say. And like, it seemed pretty confidently in Sarah's favor. But then at the start of this episode, when they went outside to have their little beef and hash things out, and Mara said, it would behoove you to be less cocky. And all the other girls were listening, and they were like totally on Mara's side, and I was thrown by that. I wasn't expecting
Me too. I also was very confused about how they could hear. I was just like, they're very far away. I was like, can they actually hear what's happening? But maybe it was mic'd up. I don't know. But I had some real questions about that. But it was clearly tense and dramatic.
All of them were in prime listening position, like crouched with one ear out the window to get that info.
It was pretty funny. I mean, it seemed genuine too that they all like really don't like her. And then that came along. I don't think they liked Mara either, but I just had no idea that Sarah was so controversial. And then after that Mara-Sarah fight, there was just many more indications that Sarah was really divisive, or not even divisive, universally disliked. And so I just did not see that coming. It was wild.
Normally there are a few more hints that someone in the household is universally unpopular.
Mm-hmm.
And as she was leaving, she talked about, like, oh, these are I made some great friends in this house. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure about that, Sarah?
Yeah. Does anyone have your number? Like, will you be in the group text afterwards? It's hard to say. It also, I now had to do like a lot of revisionist history, and I had to look back on a lot of Sarah moments. And so when Callie and I talked about Sarah's date with Clayton, we felt bad for her because she had to do like the underwear treasure hunt in Los Angeles. And
totally unnecessary shirtless moments.
So unnecessary. And I still feel bad for her over that. But they definitely presented her as like really sweet, and Mara as like an unnuanced sort of like angry, like mad woman essentially. And I just like this puts into focus how intense the editing could be. What were some of the other moments that like struck you as like, oh, this is like really manipulated and maybe not what we expected?
I also think back on that first when they did the stand-up date in Toronto.
Oh yeah, she was really mean then, right?
She was really mean, and there was no indication that these two people didn't like each other. And she was really mean to Mara, and then Mara got up there and was equally mean back, and then ended with and I think called her a desperate bitch at the end. And that seemed like an incident. Normally when you call someone a desperate bitch, it's like a real shot fired, but no one really seemed to be that worked up over it. I was kind of expecting people to be like up in arms about that. Like, oh my God, you got up on stage and called this girl a desperate bitch. And then just nobody said anything about it afterwards.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. That was weird. I was like, I do remember at the time, I was like, oh, Sarah, I didn't know that she could like be so mean. And I didn't like that they were both focusing on each other's ages so much. I was like, who cares? Like, age is but a number.
That's a pretty constant. Every few seasons, we get probably every single season, the oldest person and the youngest person have to yell at each other for no particular reason.
Totally. And it's back to this episode when they were wrapping up Sarah's one-on-one with Clayton at the very beginning of the episode. She was saying some things that were like pretty mean and sort of like Shanae and Cassidy-esque to the camera, where she's been like, nice try, you're going to go home. And I believe, thanks to producer Devon, who put this in our outline, Sarah said, it's a bitch-ass move, but it's weak. And I was like, wow, I did not see that coming from Sarah once again.
She said she's going to be headed home in a middle seat to the Jersey Turnpike with a bottle of cheap wine.
I was really offended on behalf of New Jersey.
That was like 3 consecutive, like she was like, she's headed home. Okay, that's not nice. To the Jersey Turnpike, first of all, insulting the great state of New Jersey. And the middle seat, insult to injury. And nothing wrong with cheap wine. It gets the job done.
Surely many people who are watching The Bachelor and or listening to this podcast have a soft spot for Franzia in their heart. I certainly do.
Four straight insults, and each one of them I was more defensive of Mara, who I didn't hold particularly strong opinions about.
Well, the middle seat thing is like sometimes you just, you don't book early enough in advance. You have to take a middle seat to get the flight that you want. Like, that's really like such a rude thing to say. It's like implying she's like poor or something. And like, that's just a really, really weird, rude comment.
The Bachelor's producers didn't care enough about her to pay up on Air Croatia on the way back to New Jersey. I like to think that The Bachelor does not put them in the middle seat, but that's between ABC and God.
Or maybe we can find out. But I bet they don't care.
I bet find out pretty easily.
I feel like the second they're voted off, they're just like, all right, good luck. See ya. Unless it's close to the end, then what happens if like your final two or something like that? I remember I've heard about this from Tyler and from Blake Horstman. They take you on a trip and like you travel because like you're so sad and they want to like make you feel better or something like that. So
there's a courtesy trip.
Yes. A lot of reality shows do this. It's almost like a cooling off period. Sometimes it's because they want you to like, they don't want it to be apparent that like you got home at a certain time. So like people who go on Survivor pre-merge, they go on a trip. I think this also happens on The Challenge. I think famously Johnny Bananas met one of his previous girlfriends that way on like their their exit trip or whatever. And for The Bachelor, if you make it to the final two, I think, but don't get picked, I think you get a trip. So. But
Mara was only top 9, I think. So no trip, straight back to probably the lovely Jersey Shore and not specifically the Turnpike, as Sarah suggested.
And I'm sure she had a great seat and was drinking whatever beverage
was
of her
available
choosing.
On Croatia Airlines.
I like how you call it Air Croatia.
I'm switching. I'm not sure what their national carrier is. I'll look into this later.
It's like Air Jordan, but Air Croatia. And then I'm glad you brought up 9th. So many women went home this week. It like felt like the biggest cut down day yet. Like it was kind of jarring, but we lost Sarah, Genevieve, Mara, and Eliza, I believe.
And Teddy.
Oh my God. I forgot about Teddy.
Yeah,
we'll come back to that.
I don't know why it's sort of like you'd think that this kind of happens every season where when they get to hometowns, there's this huge cut, like they get rid of the entire middle section of the show who they've kept around for a long time. Like they have these agonizing cut downs from like 18 to 16 early on. And then it gets to the end and it's like, all right, these 5 people who have been here the entire time are just gone in a second. It feels like a little bit of a shock every single year.
I know, but it's like on the one hand, it's probably easier to get rid of them because they like Clayton knows like it's not going to happen. Like with Genevieve, who we'll come back to when we get to the group date. Very clearly, he's not interested in meeting her family, and like she's just there because it's literally a quota. So it probably is easier. But then he didn't seem that broken up about Teddy. It seems like he had to probably give her the rose last week after she told him that she was a virgin. But then he was like, all right, I can't go further with you. So he got rid of her.
Yeah, he didn't seem particularly broken up about really anybody
Sarah.
Who went home.
Yeah,
this entire of those when he went from 9 to 4. So I guess for someone who had struggled with some decisions earlier in the season, very prominently, he kind of figured out what's going on here and knew who he wanted.
I think that's what was so shocking about Sarah's exit is that Clayton, for most of the season, has just been like a total dummy and falling for everything. Like the fact that he's, it seems like probably producers made him keep Shanae, but he also seemed to believe her at a certain extent. Like the fact that it took him so long to like wisen up to that. And then he was just like, Sarah, I'm going to be honest with you. It seemed like you were fake crying. Like I didn't know Clayton had that in him. That was honestly like an astonishing moment.
His complete lack. And then he was just like, yeah, I just don't believe you over and over again. And he really turned it on there and was just had no sympathy for her. Do you think she was fake crying, by the way?
I do. Do you?
Yeah, I'm not really even sure there were any. It was more that it seemed like she was trying to get to the tears. I don't even think she really made it to the actual tears.
She was speaking in a crying voice. Like she was trying, she was like, without actually crying, she was like, this has been really hard for me. Like she's like catching her breath, like that kind of thing, but not actually crying. And since there weren't any tears, and then she like immediately went back to her normal voice when he called her out on it. She was like, she just immediately went back. I don't even know how else to say it, but that was like so weird and like concerning behavior, to say the least.
She said she didn't have any tears left, which is like, I guess you need Visine or...
It's an Ariana Grande lyric.
That's true. That's true.
To cry.
Earlier in the season, Shanae like really compliment. She said, I was so impressed with my fake crying ability. I didn't have it in her. And honestly, all Bachelor contestants really need to hammer that home before they get on the show, because you go in there like Sarah without the fake crying preparation and you get caught out. You get called out by someone who hadn't called anybody out for anything in 9 episodes.
Shanae was much better at it than Sarah. Like Sarah,
she's incredible. She did it twice.
Yeah. And it was like sobbing full on both times. I wish that well, I don't wish, but Sarah definitely needed some lessons from her. I wonder if they'll become friends after the fact. I could see them like bonding over like hating Clayton and like hating the other women or something.
And wanting to progress far on the television show The Bachelor, Monday nights on ABC.
While we're on this topic, let's just talk about the group date, because this has to be one of my favorite and also most absurd conceits for a date absolutely ever. So the group date this week was Sarah, Teddy, Genevieve, Rachel, and Gabby going on a series of couples therapy, essentially date sessions with a psychoanalyst, because Sigmund Freud is from Vienna and therefore Vienna is the home of psychoanalysis. It led to Sarah saying things like, I seriously love therapy. I can't even tell you how much I love therapy. It led to a complete, like just sort of like, I would call it a meltdown, but it was more like an emotional lockup from Genevieve. It was pretty wild. And I have to say, like, I'm from New York City. I'm from the Upper West Side. Therapy is basically a religion. Like it's like very hard to, if you're not yourself in it, like not know like 5 people who are like, swear by their therapist. Nevertheless, I can't imagine someone going on TV on like a couples therapy day. Like, I love therapy. This is amazing. This was so absurd and so appalling and like borderline mean. I was just like, I cannot believe they're making these women do this, especially Genevieve.
Yeah, it wasn't really great for any of them. For like, I guess when you're in Austria, you have to try and come up with I'm not sure what other Freud themed date they could have gone with that would have been better than this. It was a little bit, there aren't many great options, but yeah, it really wasn't good therapy for anybody. It sent a pretty bad message about how therapy works, which is that the therapist will then bring you in front of all your friends and say, one of you is being performative. I feel like that's not what therapists are supposed to do, is tell everyone what you said and that you were lying.
Yeah, it was more like a seer than a therapist, essentially. First of all, I didn't see her doing any psychoanalysis. She was just like sort of asking the basic Bachelor questions, but there was no like discussion really of people's like childhood or parents or like trauma, which is funny because the show traffics in trauma. She was just sort of like being a provocateur. It was super weird.
We need to look up with the Austrian Therapy Association and see whether this person is licensed, because there were some violations of patient-client confidentiality.
Absolutely.
On this. Yeah, and it really like, therapy is supposed to be, you're just talking to someone who's trying to help you, as opposed to like, this is a thing which can be won or lost. And if you don't do a good job, you're going back in the middle seat to America.
Totally.
Whichever part of America you're from.
I was really glad that Gabby had already talked about her relationship with her mom, which sounds really challenging and sad. Because if this had been like the first forum in which it came up, I would have just been like very, very upset for her that she was forced into therapy to talk about how her mom was, really emotionally limited. So I was glad it wasn't the first time and that Clayton didn't have to rely on this moment for that. But it just is like, I guess they knew there was a lot of issues, and it's one of the reasons they had Gabby go on this date. I don't even know.
It was a bad portrayal of therapy, but a really effective date from the point of like narrowing down who is there.
Totally.
Because it clearly established that Genevieve is not ready to talk to him about, anything related to their relationship, and like that they're not a fit.
I felt physically uncomfortable for her. Like she seemed physically uncomfortable as well. But I also have to say, they kept doing these close shots on Mara during the first rose ceremony at the beginning of the episode, and Genevieve was right behind her, and it resulted in all these close-ups on Genevieve's boobs. So I feel like all we got from Genevieve this episode was like showing her breasts over and over and over, and then her not being able to like talk through her emotions. So I think it's totally normal if she doesn't actually like Clayton that much, and they haven't gotten any like true alone time together. But I just feel like this was a not kind to her in many ways.
Yeah, really did not. That's a rough way to go out. But yeah, no, I honestly, even if I was doing well in a relationship with someone on a show like this, and then you're being asked these weird questions by someone and you're being filmed, it's a pretty uncomfortable situation, even if their relationship was doing well.
I know.
But nope, time for her to go home.
I liked it. I liked how he was just like, I can't, let's just end it here. I loved it. And I was happy for Clayton because he took care of it quickly. He doesn't like conflict, so he just like nixed this one. He was able to move on. It was well handled in my opinion.
And she was totally fine with it.
Yeah.
She was like, I get it.
She agreed. Yeah, she agreed. She'll crush it in Paradise. I feel like maybe she won't find love there. I don't know if she will, but I just feel like she'll be like in the mix and just like the recipient of someone's rose for several weeks. And I just feel like she'll be a permanent fixture at Bachelor Nation.
The bartender, if you're lower third list, he was a bartender. I like your chances.
I love that. In the previous iteration of the show, they would have made up a different job for her, but like, I love it. She's a 26-year-old bartender living in LA. That's totally normal. There's many of them. That's great stuff.
They're a very important part of a thriving metropolis that allows the city to function. And
absolutely,
they're essential workers.
They literally are.
I'm not BSing at all.
No, me neither. That's one thing I've liked about this season is just like being more honest about who these women are. We were talking beforehand, and I've talked about it a lot, how like it's really nice to see nurses getting the opportunity to be on this show, like after everything they've been through with COVID and like just in general, like not making up jobs for people is like a way of indicating that their actual job isn't like good enough. And it's like kind of like quietly shaming them. And I'm really glad that they're kind of moving away from that because there's, whatever your job is, it's great. If you're employed and you want to be, congrats.
I'm just speaking off the top of my head here, but I feel like there have been guys who have been listed as bartenders in the past.
Yeah, it's like it's like super gendered to be like it's not good enough for a woman, but it's like fine for a guy.
Yeah. I feel like Shanae earlier implied that Genevieve was actually an actress, just like guessing. She saw Bartender LA and was like, she must be an actress. But
I forgot when Clayton's turned to her and was like, Genevieve, are you an actress? Are you like to me?
She was no, that's
Genevieve also like, I feel like she had a pretty good run, even though she never got a one-on-one. Clearly, she was never going to win. She got a lot of screen time for someone who never got like actual Clayton time.
She spoke up. She was the voice of reason there at the end of the Shanae conflict.
Yeah, she really was. I can't wait to see Sarah and Clayton have to confront each other at the tell-all because Sarah must have been so shocked herself. Like if we were shocked, she must have been too. And I guess I would have liked to have seen more of Sarah like having issues with the women in the house because it just seems so out of nowhere when Rachel and Teddy and Gabby were complaining about her. Like I believe them, and I think those three are like all really likable. Gabby's is clearly the Ringer fan favorite, but
woo.
I really like Rachel
Gabby
too.
Yeah.
Why do you love Gabby? What are your reasons?
Just seems to actually be having fun, and like no one has ever seemed to have fun in the history of this show. People have smiled. People have had a good time. People have fallen in love. Having fun, like actually enjoying these moments and trying to make the most of them seems so rare.
It's true. That's a good point.
She crosses the good hang threshold very easily. Another thing that's tough to do on this show, where we've all come in support of her, and we're proud to see her in hometowns.
I think she's also
Gabby.
much like you go, Gabby. Much like this episode, she's surprising. Like I don't know what I was expecting, but it's not like this like goofy fun person that we've seemed to get to know.
I'm all for it. I'm although she seems to be crying and having bad news in the promos, so I'm pretending I haven't seen that.
Who knows what happens in the promos? But what a hilarious and eventful group date. Thank you, Bachelor. This was great fun.
Bad endorsement for therapy. Great endorsement for The Bachelor.
Yeah, seriously. We kind of talked about Susie, but before she wore the Lady in Red costume, she got to have the quote unquote pretty woman date, which is absolutely one of my least favorite tropes in all of Bachelor Nation. I mean, this shopping date where the Bachelor allegedly like buys stuff for her and he's like, it's all about you today. And she tries on tons of clothing. That just seems like an awful date, not to mention like paternalistic and weird and like based on the story of a prostitute who finds love. So
and he's not
I hate it.
He's not paying for it.
He's not paying for it. It's like nothing. It's like how could you possibly learn anything about her? It was so uncomfortable. I hated it.
Yeah. And it's, first of all, I don't like the guy taking credit for what's clearly going on ABC's card.
Yeah.
It's not like he planned any part of this, and it's always giving credit as if he planned it. But it just feels like they're clearing the way for Susie here. She got to sort of pull Clayton aside in the last episode and go up to the clock tower, which is like totally something you can't do unless the show wants you to pull them aside
absolutely.
at that moment. And so they gave her the clothes. They gave her the big red dress. I'm assuming she didn't pick that. I'm assuming that was given. It looked like she got to pick out some things, but they definitely gave her the red dress. And you know that because they already paid the Lady in Red guy to show up in the castle. She could have picked a white or black gown.
One question I have about that is if they do fittings for everyone. Because I was wondering, like, how did that dress fit her so perfectly? And I wondered, like, did they measure all of the women or was it quickly... Like, I don't know. I just had a lot of questions about them. It made me wonder more broadly, like, how do they do like contingency planning for who's going to get what date? Because like not every woman is the same size. And that dress fit her like a glove. Like she looked good. So I was confused about that. But anyway, one day we'll find out.
It just, they had to do so much ahead of time to create that illusion of spontaneity.
Yes.
Including flying in the non-Austrian singer guy. And in the most beautiful palace in the world, it was like they put them in the perfect room. She's wearing the perfect outfit. They had the old timey car. I feel like when you go on the Pretty Woman date, you win the show.
Yeah,
it always happens.
That's a good point. Becca Crewfriend went on the Pretty Woman date, so that's a good point. I can't remember the last time they did it because it's been a minute, but
I think Hannah Ann got it.
Yes, she did. You're right.
So it shows that they're putting they're putting their efforts behind you, and they've purchased many fancy clothes for you. It's a sign, I think.
It's a good point. And we've gotten a lot of Susie lately. Also, everyone, including me included, have been like, it's clearly Rachel. He's so into Rachel. She got 2 group dates in a row after a one-on-one. Like he loves Rachel. It's Rachel. But I don't think that the Bachelor producers would let Rachel run to the ends like that. It sort of would be like letting the 23 wins in a row Heat like have an even longer winning streak, or like the 73-9 Warriors win the championship. Like it's too perfect, right? And so the Warriors is probably a better example. So I also know we all know from when Colton talked to This American Life that they fuck with you about like they being the producers about like who can go on what dates. And so he tried to, and Colton somewhat famously tried to like fuck with them back by lying about his rankings. And he made it seem like he was into Hannah G, even though he was into Cassie the whole time. And so I just wonder if like this Rachel narrative is a trick, or like if the producers were somehow behind it. Cause it was really, really weird that Clayton gave her 2 group date roses in a row. Like that's like usually a really strong indication that person's going to win. But it's been so obvious. Plus he asked her about hometowns like last week, way in advance, 2 weeks out. Like is it okay if I meet your family? Essentially is what he said. And so I kind of agree with you that like we're getting a counter narrative of Susie right now. And I feel like it's going to come down to those 2.
That maybe as we noted, there had to be a lot of prior work put in to get this date put together. It had to be done by the producers. So maybe Susie is more of, or maybe Rachel is more of Clayton's pick, and Susie is the one who the producers wanted to go on the Pretty Woman / Lady in Red date. Theories. I
like that one. I like that a lot because I also wonder if, how far in advance they plan this stuff. We'll have to find out. But
if you get that lady in red date, maybe you're less of a winner of the show and more of a next Bachelorette.
Lady in red? Oh, next Bachelorette. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because that's something you could easily flash back to. You could be like, remember when we flew
sad Susie like wearing that dress and all of that.
The world's largest. The train was when they showed her in the back seat of the fancy car, and there was literally it was just like the train made it impossible for her to even sit. It was just filling up the entire seat. It was like they worked on this.
I thought she looked really pretty. But I was just sort of like, this seems like a weird like Disney fantasy of like her in this dress and not like an actual living man's fantasy. Like I was just like, is Clayton like even into this? Like, does he even find this attractive? Like I think that's also like another weird part of this. It doesn't seem correlated to reality at all, which I know is so shocking for The Bachelor.
Yeah, living in a castle, and they said fairy tale up front.
Yes. Yeah. And I was just like, does he even care about this red dress? Probably not. But I mean, it's nice if she looks pretty, I suppose.
I don't think he cares about Chris de Burgh either.
He
doesn't seem like a big de Burgh head.
They also, just one thing we have to know about this particular Pretty Woman treatment, they really upped the ante by not only going shopping, but then going to like the private fashion gallery and where Susie tried on even more dresses that were like really high couture. By any chance, have you seen the Lizzie McGuire movie?
Am I going to be allowed back if I say no? I'm sorry,
okay.
I haven't.
It's sorry. Fine, because this is the second time this season I've asked that, because I also was wondering if the women of the show had seen it when Hilary Duff was on. So, first of all, Lizzie McGuire movie is great. And in it, there's a scene. It is.
I had a funny feeling that you were going to have a pro Lizzie McGuire movie take after that intro.
Well, there's a scene in it where Lizzie McGuire goes to like the exact same thing as Eva Polashinsky's private fashion gallery. The designer is named Franca Demonca-Datina, and Lizzie McGuire makes her really angry. And I was thinking about that the whole time. Like, this is like basically a Lizzie McGuire scene as well. And that's like a, you know, happy, but like sort of regular American girl in Europe, like living the high life. And it was like a lot like Lizzie McGuire. Devon, do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Yes, of course. When she tries on the igloo dress, the inflatable igloo dress, iconic. Yes.
Yeah. So it was like a weird mashup of like a Disney movie and Lizzie McGuire. I'm sure that wasn't a mistake. There's been a lot of Hilary Duff this season. Anyway, it was like just a lot. And to quote the great Tayshia Adams, it's a lot. And yeah, I don't know. Congrats, Susie. We got our eye on you. I like your theory, Rodger.
Definitely American girl flies over to Europe and momentarily becomes a princess is like a trope we've hit in a lot of movies, which may or may not have been intended for adult guys like Clayton. So I think you're on something too.
I was a senior in high school when the Lizzie McGuire movie came out. I'm not embarrassed. I probably was too old for it, but great movie, you know? That's all I'll say. Just some great tunes as well. This episode is brought to you by eBay Authenticity Guarantee. eBay knows that when it comes to jewelry, authenticity is the real gem. When you see the blue check mark that says Authenticity Guarantee, it means your next piece will be carefully inspired by jewelry experts and will always be worth its weight in gold. Whether you're looking to make a statement or build the perfect everyday look, eBay is making sure you get the real deal. With eBay Authenticity Guarantee, you can trust that jaw-dropping piece will always arrive jaw-droppingly real. Ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. This episode is brought to you by Visible. Maybe you've already let your New Year's resolution slip. We all have, but you can still make a 2 year's resolution with Visible. Right now, you can get a one-line wireless plan from Visible for just $20 per month for 24 months. 24 months is basically 4 Bachelor seasons. That could be 4 engagements, 4 broken engagements. So many other couples we didn't see coming. It's really an eternity in Bachelor Nation. And that's unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon with no annual contracts. Switch now at Visible.com and use the code VISIBLE24. Don't miss out. Offer ends January 31st. New members only. Promotional rate with service on the Visible plan. For additional terms and network management practices, see Visible.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Other major shock of this episode. Serene, Final Four. I did not see this coming, but I'm absolutely delighted. Serene seems awesome. And I have to say, early in the episode, when he set up the special moment that was a tribute to her cousin who passed away, I thought that was incredibly sweet. And I was really happy for her. I just thought that was a really classy move. And whether or not it was Clayton's idea, it doesn't matter. He obviously was for it. And I don't know, I just didn't see this coming, but it's great.
So she had talked about capturing fireflies with her cousin, and they gave her a little jar filled with little tiny lights.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I just wondered whether they had tried to do it with real fireflies.
No way.
Or got in trouble with PETA or something, had to go with the lights. But it was a really sweet moment that I can barely even make jokes about.
I know it was really sweet, and I remembered saying aloud by myself, "Oh, that's really sweet." That was a genuinely really nice moment, indicated that someone's paying attention to Serene. That was in Croatia, by the way. That was before they even got to Austria, and which makes me wonder, do they even have fireflies in Hvar? I'm not sure they do.
I don't know about where fireflies live, what their range is. I kind of assumed they were a worldwide phenomenon before this episode, but now I'm thinking they're also not necessarily a winter bug. So it might have been hard for them to harness them and keep them. Yeah. But I assume they probably were just told you can't give her live fireflies.
Too hard. Then she finally gets she gets second one-on-one. So the first one was in Galveston, where she was forced to wear shoes on the sand, which Callie and I were told is actually really hard packed sand. So it's fine. But she's kind of gotten the two worst one-on-ones in which she doesn't actually do anything. She went to the amusement park, and then this one, they just walked around.
Yeah, they saw some people dancing. So they very rarely, I noticed this on Rachel's date in Houston, where they had them show up and there was random people having a good time. But when they're in Europe, they always do that. When they're in Europe, they're always walking around, and they happen upon an elderly couple that's been together for 57 years. There's someone on the Bachelor's team who recruits elderly European couples to come and look romantic and dance in a public town square. One of the most interesting jobs on the staff. Yeah, that's got to be the most interesting job on the staff. Are these professional actors? Do you just go into the town square and look for people who are already dancing to accordion music? But they always find them. And of course, Serene and Clayton walked up and they switched partners, and I couldn't tell. Was it an Austrian waltz? Was it or was it just generic accordion music? I'm not an expert.
Thanks for the proper pronunciation of waltz versus waltz. Thanks, Rodger.
Great
job. No, I appreciate it, man. You're a real pro. I don't know what that dance was. I was Serene deserves more. Give Serene a better date. Do something interesting.
Here's what got me. So obviously, they gave her they gave Susie the big red dress in the castle, and then Serene showed up and she was also in a red dress at her palace, and they didn't have anyone to sing for her. They didn't have anyone to sing any dress related songs for her, and I felt bad at that moment because now her red dress is lost in time, which was a perfectly fine red dress that she didn't have brought to her by the Bachelor producers. And then they made out in front of the Gustav Klimt painting. I didn't hit the pronunciation on that.
It's cool. Do you think that Clayton is familiar with Gustav Klimt?
Well, he said it's one of the most famous paintings in Austria.
So probably not.
I mean, I'm
going to go with no, and that's okay. You don't have to be an art expert, but I just don't feel that Clayton is really up on his European painting.
No. My favorite was earlier in the season, I think the second episode, when they did back-to-back dates at the antiques place.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
And as they're walking in, one of the girls said, "Oh, maybe he likes antiques." About Clayton. And I was thinking, like,
Yeah,
Clayton
sure.
has honestly come across like as a pretty genuine guy. Like they said, he was genuine a million times at the beginning. He's actually surprised me. He seems to really care about this and put
He
thought
seems
into
like a
things.
good guy.
Doesn't seem like an antiquer. Doesn't
No.
seem like a Klimt fan.
No, definitely not.
What I gotta
Definitely
say,
not, but that's okay. He's just going with it.
Vienna has good palaces. That
Yes,
is
it
something I
does.
learned in this episode. The palaces over there, top notch. The Austrians knew what they were doing with their palaces, and they got to use pretty much all of them, I assume. Like every single date in this episode was in some sort of beautiful palace.
I'd love to go to Vienna. I've never been. Also, like, I was kind of surprised I didn't do any Sound of Music theme stuff, like a yodeling date or like some kind of like Sound of Music tour. I don't know. I feel like
they went with Freud.
It's true. They chose Freud over the great Von Trapp family, but they could have made the Pretty Woman date a Maria Von Trapp date, where like basically Captain Von Trapp like refuses to let her wear crappy clothes, so they could have been like, "This is your Von Trapp date." I don't know.
They also like played some classical music heading in. I'm always thinking about how they decide to do these things. They didn't really hit the classical music that hard afterwards. I think maybe force the Freud a little bit, but there's not really
A little bit, you think? Yeah, I would say so.
Maybe they didn't have to go that way.
No, they could have gone to the mountains. Missed opportunity, if you ask me. Serene did something really impressive, which she managed to extract information from Clayton that we haven't heard yet, which is she shared that the only person her family has met was like her high school boyfriend that she then dated for a long time. And as a result, Clayton shared about how he also like outgrew a relationship essentially and like talked about his ex. And this whole time I've been wondering like about Clayton's exes. Not that we learned so much, but this is like the most specific he's been, I think, through 7 episodes. So shouts to Serene. I guess we just weren't privy to this before because it's been like a Rachel or Sarah situation, but he clearly really likes her. This episode, I was like, wow, Serene's like coming on really strong and I'm here for it. She seems great.
She also got him to open up about having been a ice cream salesman at the on the amusement park date. That was one of my. I honestly wanted more info there about his life at Six Flags, and I
googled it a little bit, and like people DM me about it. Seems like he just was, it's kind of like being a cast member at Disneyland, except he's a cast member at Six Flags, just selling food.
But clearly, she is able to unearth these childhood memories from Clayton. So
he clearly feels very comfortable with her.
Yeah, we were caught off guard just because we haven't had that many chances to see her do stuff. I honestly don't remember her doing anything up until that amusement park date. I don't remember her like introduction or anything.
Same, but like so much time has been given to Shanae, and before that Cassidy. There's been a lot of Rachel. There's been a lot of Sarah. And so, the Susie and Serene movement has seemingly come out of nowhere. And also I do feel like we got to know Gabby because she has so many good one-liners and like talks to the camera really well. So there wasn't a lot of room for other people. I mean, let's talk about Teddy, because Teddy went home and I thought that she would have like much bigger storyline just based on her getting the first impression rose. And I've brought this up so many times, but when I interviewed Jesse Palmer, he was like, keep an eye on Teddy. And Teddy didn't really do anything other than get the first impression rose and talk about not having had sex. So why should I be keeping an eye on her, Jesse Palmer?
Well, we haven't seen a lot of Jesse lately.
I love Jesse. Where do you stand on him?
I'm very pro Jesse. I think he's done a good job, but he appears in this episode just in the rose ceremonies. In the last episode, Clayton asked him for advice and he got like 20 seconds of advice, and it was great advice. He was just like, go to Sarah, make her talk about this. All right, I'll see you later. But yeah, maybe he just wasn't aware of how Teddy was doing. I think what is it? The first impression rose doesn't really work out a lot.
Well, on The Bachelor it doesn't. On The Bachelorette it does.
There's that very strange divide there. If you asked me going into just totally blind, which of the two shows would be better at people seeing someone right off the bat and ending up with that person, I would have said the guys would be better at it.
I guess I kind of kind of get that because like they would like want to, you know, for lack of a better term, consummate that intuition a little bit more and like make it real. But I guess with the women, like they just get like more single-minded. I don't really know why that is.
I would have said the guys would just see the hottest person, be like, point to be like that one,
right.
and then just like end up with them 10 weeks later. But they always end up somehow deciding against it, whereas the women are apparently great at assessing character right off the bat and often end up with the person they gave the first impression rose to.
Yeah. So, a friend of mine, Sarah, mentioned to me a couple weeks ago that she felt like Teddy was getting the Abigail treatment, which is like first impression rose and then basically like window dressing. Yeah. And she proved to be totally right. Like there's just wasn't much there with Teddy. He definitely was scared off by her sexual history. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I guess there is doubt since I don't know for sure, but it seems pretty clear.
I am glad, though, they didn't go with like a 7-episode long virginity storyline, which we've seen pretty much every other time they have.
Also, yeah. And also to kind of like a credit to Teddy, she's like, I think just like pretty regular. Like, and the fact that she has or hasn't had sex, like doesn't really define her. And so they weren't really able to turn her into a storyline like that, which I think is like speaks well of her.
No room for regular people on this show.
I know. It's so true. So we're left with Rachel, Gabby, Susie, and Serene. I mean, Sarah going home in the middle of the group date. I wish I could have gambled on that. I never, ever would have guessed it based on how the show has been edited up to this episode. But it was kind of a great surprise. I mean, the shock of it was just like really shocking, and how it does not happen often with The Bachelor.
So where are we headed next week? I'm excited for it. We haven't had hometowns in a while. We haven't had real hometowns in a while. And hometowns is always one of my favorite episodes because it can't really be as they can't put you in the beautiful palace in Austria. They have to go into someone's home, and they can't really produce that. And you really see the people. So we've got
Gabby in Denver.
Denver Bachelor, Bachelor Haven.
Hotspot. Yeah, seriously. Although I wonder if like her family's actually there. Who knows? Susie is in Virginia Beach. I'm looking forward to that. Susie also, by the way, the fact that she's 28, she's just looks much younger to me. And I guess I like assume she was a little bit younger. Again, age is but a number, but I just was surprised by that.
We've done Virginia Beach recently, I think, right? Wasn't
I think Kaylin was from around there, if I recall correctly.
Yes. And she was Miss North Carolina, but she was from
Virginia.
Yeah. Because you have to shop
had
around.
Total transformation. You know, Kaylin, by the way, Gabby dated Dean, Kaylin's boyfriend.
Yeah, and that hasn't come up at all. They
has not.
They just kept that in the back pocket. Is that going to be a thing or not a thing?
I think not a thing. I think it's just like, okay, she's dated a bunch of people. But we'll find out. Serene, we got in Oklahoma City. And who's the fourth one? Susie, Serene, Gabby,
Rachel. We're going to Florida to see our flight instructor and where she lives.
Right. Claremont, Florida. You know, I was thinking about Rachel. I wonder how they got so lucky to have the person who walked in with the old Bachelor contestant go this far. Like, did they know? Was it a plant? Like, that is so good for The Bachelor. The fact that like Rachel, the one who came in with the old Bachelor contestant, is like still in the mix because it's like a talk. Here I am talking about it, you know? And I'm like, wow, good job, everybody.
So The Bachelor producers are better at knowing who's going to go far than the guy giving out the first impression rose.
Absolutely.
Because the first impression rose did not make it to the final four. She made it past the therapy date. She was the fifth of Teddy was the fifth, and they needed 4.
Yeah. Good. I mean, you know, close but no cigar, Clayton. By the way, I had to look it up, but Claremont, Florida is near Orlando, so that's where they'll be going for Rachel. And I'm pretty excited. Also, I guess I'm curious what your predictions are with all the information we now have for who leaves and who makes final. Like, who I assume someone self-eliminates before final 2. Who do you think makes it to Fantasy Suites? Like, who's going home next week?
Oh my God. So I'm kind of coming in. I was thinking because Susie got the treatment this episode that she was going far, but I'm now switching my opinion and thinking that Clayton's not actually that into her. The show just really wants that to be a thing and want it. So I'm knocking her off and keeping Gabby, Rachel, and Serene, because he seems legitimately into Rachel and Serene, and Gabby's great, and I want her to succeed and thrive in life. So therefore, I'm putting her into the final 3.
I think Gabby's going home next week. I think final 3 is Rachel, Serene, and Susie. I think Rachel makes it to final 2 because I'm positive we see her crying on the staircase, like face down. And I don't know who I think self-exits between Susie and Serene. Maybe Serene, just because I think she seems like kind of better than Clayton. But I don't know. This episode has been such a big shakeup. I have to reassess all of my predictions and assumptions.
Yeah, it really did catch me off guard. And I just love life as someone who would pay not to look at Bachelor spoilers, but also who studies the promos for future episodes, like frame by frame, to see what's going to happen next, but also doesn't want any part of actually knowing. I think this is the ideal life that we've chosen.
I think so too. It feels great. Rodger, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a blast. Thank you to Devon Manze for having seen the Lizzie McGuire movie and for producing this episode. I will be back on Thursday with Callie. Got to hear her thoughts on this crazy one. If you are interested in reality TV, check out the Reality TV podcast. Not only do we have Johnny Bananas and Tyson Apostle from The Challenge and Survivor, respectively, but we're also recapping Love is Blind over there. Me, Amelia Wedemeyer, and Kevin O'Connor. It's really great fun. So please check it out. Thanks again to Rodger, and thank you all for listening. I'll be back later this week.